and welcome to episode 28 of the FreoBigfooty Podcast. This week we'll be reviewing the game against Essendon, where Fremantle ran out comfortable victors and pulling away after half-time to a 18-goal 5, 113 to 9-goal 6 victory with a comfortable 53-point win. And then we'll also have a look at the upcoming game against Sydney, looking at the team changes and a bit of a preview of the match going on there. Joining us this week, and once again is back with us, our regular Victorian guru, Seppo. How are you, mate?
I'm good, Centurions. Great to be back and looking forward to this one.
Excellent. And also joining us this week, who's making his first appearance since his grand final appearance preview, Paracleet. How are you, mate? Thanks for joining us.
Mate, I'm great, and it's good to be back.
Excellent. Nice to have you on board. Fremantle last week was a sort of a bit of a 50-50 game where most people thought about with Essendon, who'd shown some good form in the pre-season and in the early rounds, coming up against Fremantle. There was obviously quite a bit of talk about the final lineup Essendon would go with. I mean, there was obviously a lot of talk about Chapman not playing due to only playing a certain amount of games. But they also had Fletcher and Myers missing. But Fremantle themselves still had a number of key players out. But the game sort of in warm conditions, certainly warm for football, Fremantle turned on the style after half-time and had a blistering third quarter where they managed to kick away with a 7-goal-1 third quarter, which basically opened the game up and ended it as a contest. What did you think of the game, Seppo, watching it?
Mine was a quite interesting take on the actual game. I was actually in transit from a weekend in Adelaide. So it started off by me missing the first quarter altogether by being on a plane. As I got into the terminal, I pulled up the phone, and without radio access, I managed to track most of the second quarter scores. So it's great to see that it was a nice tight contest up until that point and nice and level. Jumped into the car and listened to the third quarter on the radio on the way home and managed to catch the last quarter on TV. So 3 or 4 forms of media there to watch that game, and it was just great to listen to the goals pile on and a nice dominant performance and a good spread. It was the big thing for me because I thought this was going to be a 50-50 game, but the way we actually got even performance around the ground from a lot of the guys, and I suppose I missed the early dominance of Johnson and McFarlane in the back line. It was hard to get an idea of their sort of positions on the radio, but it's just great to see the way that these other guys around really picking up the slack from when guys like, Walters aren't out there and Main, and we're still hitting that scoreboard and pumping up. And once again, we're getting over 100 points, and it's just really good to see that, thought this is going to be a danger game, and we're showing dominance.
Absolutely. What did you think, Paracleet?
Well, to use the classic soccer cliche, it was a game of two halves. The first half you missed, Seppo, was, well, it was basically Essendon had 15 of their 18 blokes in one half, and we had 13 of our blokes in one half. And the only reason we weren't 6 goals up at half time was because every time we got it, we kept kicking it straight to their centre-half forward. Sorry, centre-half back. But every time they got the ball, they didn't even look like scoring. It was a very strange game. And I missed most of the second half. And I remember thinking as I was leaving the house reluctantly without trying to display my obsession to my wife that, I'm happy to leave the house and miss the second half. Yeah, it's going to be fine, sweetie. But I remember thinking to myself, well, I think we've got this one pretty well covered, and I expect them to run out of puff, and lo and behold, they did and got thrashed.
Yeah, it was certainly, it was like they pulled up sticks and they were sort of beaten at half time, and obviously Goddard came out of the game a little bit early with a groin injury, which didn't help their cause at all. But I really don't think it would have made any difference at the end of the day. I mean, Goddard's not that. Certainly towards this tail end of his career, he's certainly not one of those hard gut runners that you would probably need at Subiaco to make that difference. I thought the inclusion of obviously, and I think for most people, seeing Zach Dawson back in defence. I know a lot of people and he still cops a bit on the forums, but I think he highlighted his importance early in the first half there. Just not only did he open up Johnson to go that third man, but just manages to come across, gets his fist in there a lot, and helps even peels off his man and helps out third man up as well. And I think just having him back there stabilised the defence quite a lot, and it was really pleasing to see him back in the side.
Well, he's that good at covering position that Johnson doesn't have to peel off his man. He's never on him.
Well, Well, exactly right. And I mean, they do play that, and it's amazing how every week teams still allow Johnson to play that loose man, and you know, and I'm surprised that Essendon didn't at least try and go the 7-man forward line or something similar, just to make Johnson that little bit more accountable, especially once Fremantle got a bit of a run on.
I suppose Dawson not being there.
They were insisting on playing a loose man defence themselves, though, weren't they?
That Dawson not being there for the Hawthorn game really highlighted the difference. Really, him coming back made Johnson McFarlane's job easier. So much so that I think they got 55 possessions between the two of them, which is almost unheard of. So it was great to see that what Dawson does to that back line is free up the other two.
Yeah. I think the other
last time that a centre half back got that many possessions, that wasn't Brian Lake. 31 possessions is a lot of footy. No,
absolutely it was. And I mean, there was quite a bit of it late in the game when they were sort of chipping it around. But when the game was there to be won, I thought he played extremely well. And just having that settled back six certainly makes life a lot better and makes a lot of our sort of rebounding from defence and into attack a lot smoother with having those settled guys in there. I thought the other inclusion from last week was obviously Matt Taberner, and I thought he also, although he kicked 2 goals, I thought he was a bit unlucky with a couple of them where he got his arms sort of hacked off a bit, but I thought he presented pretty well all day in the trying conditions, and he'll work better with Pav. I mean, a couple of times they sort of ran into each other's space, but I thought he presented well all day and certainly seemed to be a better option than what Hanneth has offered in the first 3 weeks.
He certainly has.
I think he straightens us up a bit. He straightens us up. It gives us some more structure, because when Pav leads off towards the half-forward flank in the past, that sucks everyone with him, and there's just nothing there. Whereas now Pav can safely lead off 70 metres up the ground, knowing that the midfielders carrying the ball forward, if for some reason they can't pick Pav out, will be confident that they can actually kick it to someone who might have some chance of holding onto the footy and not coughing it up and causing a massive rebound.
I think a big bonus to our forward structures, with also Taberner there as that 4, almost a third tall, was the way that Clark actually moved around the ground and really helped us shift play quicker, and also clunk a couple of his marks as well, because I can't remember the number of contested marks he ended up picking, but it was a lot more, and it was a great upgrade on Hanneth. I think it certainly helped our forays forward. And I think even our conversion rate, the way we actually shot on goal, was a lot better than we have in the past. And it sort of just showed how well we went. I think we had a conversion rate of about 78%, where Essendon only had about 60%. And we roughly had the same amount of, I can't remember if it was scoring shots or inside 50s or something in the end. No, we actually had 45 and Essendon only had 30. So it was great to see that we dominated when we went inside and really hit the scoreboard well. And even guys like Daniel Pearce, who'd usually miss those long shots he takes, he's dobbed a few, and hopefully he keeps that up.
Yeah, I thought Pearce was probably arguably his best game for the club, and his third quarter in particular.
I agree.
Was probably the catalyst, and he certainly set the tone early in that third quarter. And I think that's probably, if not his best game, it was certainly his best quarter that he played. He went in hard.
It was certainly his best all-round game.
Yeah.
A combination of inside and outside game.
No, absolutely.
He's had good outside games, he's had good inside games, but he combined both on the weekend, I thought.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, Seppo, Clark gave us 11 marks, which was, and a couple of them and quite a few of those were contested, and he gave us a little presence up forward. He kicked a goal there, which was also pleasing. So, I mean, for his first game back, you have to be happy with that performance. And I think
I like him leading up. I like him leading. I like him playing when he's not rucking.
Yeah.
I like him playing as high up the ground as possible, leading right up, because nobody who that can match up on him is going to be able to go with him with that tank that he's got.
Yeah. No, it was really pleasing. And I think the other guy who really kept us in the game early when they was sort of the heat was on was Stephen Hill. I thought Hill was really, really good early on in the contested possessions, and just in the stoppage work. And I think his bullocking work, I think he's certainly added another string to his bow this year in terms of his ability to get in that contested possession and win the ball, where before he'd sort of be in there, but he wasn't really making not a half-hearted effort, but he was really winning those one-on-one contests, where now if he's not winning it, he's certainly halving the contest and keeping the ball locked in there, which is certainly better for us as well as a team, especially without those two key on-ballers in Barlow and Fife, who obviously Fife will be back this week.
I suppose there's a big byproduct of those two not being there that, Hill and Mundy and Daniel Pearce are forced to be at the feet of Sandilands more. But I think it's brilliant when you can see what the sort of chemistry working between Sandilands. I think it was the third or fourth quarter where I think he got two in a row, and the commentators kept on going about linking those two up, and the way that Hill sort of crept through the pack, got onto it, and just got it on his boot, and he's showing more confidence that when he sort of splits that pack, that he knows where to put it on the boot, if not to advantage of someone, straight towards goal. So great to see Hill's confidence is up and about now.
Yeah, and as you said, it was one of those games
It
where
can't be his opponent. Sorry, it's not like his opponent is not picking him up. People in the past have accused him of being easy to tag out of the game. It's not like coaches have suddenly forgotten that Hill's someone they need to tag. He's just breaking. He's making a position. He's breaking that tag easier than he was.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we'll just continue to see that and hopefully improve as the year goes on. And I think obviously the combination of Pearce and Hill in particular, once we get our full contingent of midfield in there, is just going to be more and more dangerous, particularly with those quick transitions between the defence and attack, because those two players, when they're on song, not only have pace but also do have good kicking skills and are able to hit targets up the ground.
Well, look, Hill was one of the best field kicks in the competition, bar none. That's why it's laughable when you hear people speculating about which Hill brother's the better player.
Yeah, I think Brad does. I mean, it's not a Brad versus Stephen thing, but I think Brad. I mean, I'd be more than happy to have Brad in our side, and I think he will actually be a pretty damn good player down the track. I mean, they are different sort of players, but it'll be interesting to see where they both end up by the end of their careers. That's for sure. Yeah, interesting thing as well was when
kicking makes the difference. Kicking makes the difference because Brad has a lot of things. He's got a massively huge tank, and he attacks the footy hard and he runs the lines, but there's no substitute for the ability to hit a target under pressure at full pace over 45 metres.
Yeah,
and that's what Steve provides.
Yeah, but I think I think Brad Hill's kicking efficiency is a lot better this year than it was in the past, and he does obviously have a couple of years behind Stephen in terms of his development, but I think his kicking efficiency has actually improved significantly this year. I mean, I could be wrong, but it did look like...
No, you are correct, and his kicking efficiency is well above what he was rated in. He was rated in the draft as a poor kick. That's why he went pick 30 instead of pick 10. I'm not talking about being able to hit a target. I'm talking about the difference between an elite field kick over distance and just a good average kick. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, time will obviously tell. So, but as I said, I'll be more than happy if we had both Hills in our side. That's for sure. I mean, we'll be happily take the one that we've got, and hopefully one day we may get the other one as well. But I can't see it happening anytime soon. The other key probably discussion point after the game was, I thought there was two key other things out of the Essendon game. One was the interesting thing that when Mundy went off at half time with a concussion, obviously through some friendly fire, that it seemed that once Mundy went off, the other boys actually stood up, a little bit more, where maybe they were just waiting for Mundy to do the job out there. I'm not sure what it was or whether it was a combination of that and the heat, but they seemed to grow another leg when Mundy wasn't there after he went out with a concussion, and they sort of got on top a little bit more on the clearances. So I wasn't sure if it was a combination of things or not, but it was interesting that when Mundy sort of got subbed out, that the other players seemed to step up a little bit more, which was pleasing.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a whole half without Fife, Mundy and Barlow. And last time we had those three missing, the result didn't really go away. So I think it was great to see that midfield, that second tier group really step up with Mundy off. I really thought that, once he came off, it sort of maybe, brought it back on terms with Goddard going off for them so early. But it was great to see that midfield really step up, and they certainly did lift.
Yeah, and obviously the other major one was Josh Simpson, who made he considered his debut after he did get a game last year against the Saints, but let's be honest, as I said in the broadcast, I think anyone who was on our list last year and was fit and able probably got a game that game, but he certainly came on and had an impact in the after half time with 13 possessions, and probably his tackling rate was pleasing to see. I thought he showed some good patches out there, and obviously shows some of the skills that people who go down and watch him at training regularly can see. And like a lot of the time, you only hear the negatives in terms of his, ability to adjust to AFL level. But you can certainly see why the team, and particularly the recruiters, looked at him with that first round pick.
I've been itching to see him step up and demonstrate that he can match at the highest level. I remember watching him play for Freo in probably round 3 or 4 last year on ABC, watching a waffle game, and when he's received the ball about 60 out and then jogged in and balked past literally 3 players, which is you don't see that sort of thing in this day and age when people can run. Walking around 3 players and kicking a goal. I thought this guy's got some special footballing talent. And but does he have the other things you need too, which is the ability to run? And I think we're now saying that he does have the discipline as well as the skill to be a really high quality footballer.
The big question will be now, can he do it over 4 quarters? Because it looked like he was a bit puffed and out of steam towards the end, and sort of might explain why he's not on the team that's basically going to face Sydney, but it certainly require a lot more solid performance. He's definitely got the skill to play AFL, but whether he has the fitness or not will probably come out, and at least he's taken and grabbed that opportunity, and he did sort of fluff a couple of kips, but he did do a couple of good things. So it's great to see that at least he is on the right track. He's got that taste, and hopefully it keeps him hungry to perform for Peel.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, obviously moving on from that, there's 2 changes to the side this week with obviously 2 very experienced players and, arguably definitely our best 22 and certainly best 18 even, with Chris Mayne and Nathan Fyfe coming back into the side, where we'll also have and the 2 guys going out are Hayden Crozier and Josh Simpson. There was some talk today about Simpson missing the flight over as an emergency, and obviously then because he wasn't at the flight, they sort of dropped him out of even the emergency list and had Aitness brought in. But I think Crozier will obviously go over to the game, and depending on the weather conditions, will probably decide whether they stick with having Taberner in the side or whether Crozier comes in, particularly with the amount of rain that Sydney's had over there the last fortnight or so.
Do you guys think we've gone in a bit too tall for this? Obviously, if it's dry, it's going to suit. Having that same forward setup we've just had, plus the addition of Mayne and even Fyfe when he can drop forward, but have Pavlich, Zach Clark, Mayne, Taberner, all those guys out there. Do you think we're going a bit too tall against Sydney, or are you guys happy with that sort of selection, and do you hope it stays dry?
In a word, yes, I think we are too tall. I think Taberner probably should have come out if there's any realistic chance of it being wet.
I certainly would prefer Crozier, but it's good to see Taberner's getting another run because consistency is good. I think I mentioned on last week's podcast, but consistency is good for these young guys. And he certainly did a lot of good things, and working with Pav's going to be great for his development and our days post-Pav. But I have a feeling against this side, and knowing Sydney, there's always afternoon drizzle, and that ground can get a bit slippery. If there is any sign, if we are going to see a late change, it just makes sense to pull Taberner out to get Crozier in there, because Crozier, the way he played, certainly was a lot taller than what he is. So he's a smaller kid, but he's got the ability to play a lot higher and 3 or 4 feet off the ground. So I'd like to see that change if it is sign of weather. But as it stands, dry, it's probably good enough. It does seem tall, probably the tallest we've been for a while, but I'll be happy to see which way it goes.
Yeah, it's been nice to see Crozier coming at the footy rather than from behind it, so he can use his leap.
Did that a couple of times. He nearly pulled a couple of great marks down, but I think he got bashed into a couple of times or went a bit too early.
It'll be interesting to see whether that's something that Lyon talked about, or particularly the forward coaches, because the reality is without, that's really the role of Walters and Ballantyne. That's what we've got, those big blokes down there, and maybe they didn't want Crozier playing that sort of leaping 3rd man up or 4th man or 5th man up, rather than being front and centre. If you've got someone like Sandilands and Clark and Taberner or Pav down there and they're bringing the ball to ground, it's no good Crozier being up there in the clouds if the ball hits the ground and we've got no one there to pounce on it. I know Ballantyne is there as well, but I just wonder if it's something that the coaches have said to him, if it's a one-on-one contest, by all means, go for it. But otherwise, we need you at the ground ball when the ball hits the turf. And it'd just be interesting to see whether the coaches allow him to have that free
rein.
logic
to what you're saying. I mean, there's some logic to what you're saying, because the contests he flew for on the weekend were not 1-on-1s or 2-on-2s. They were in the pack.
Yeah, and the ball literally came to ground, but we had no one there for it. And I just wonder if that's something that they'll consider. Looking at the weather, it looks like there'll be a very small chance of rain at 5 p.m. They say 10% chance, and then from pretty much halfway through the game, it'll be 0% chance. But as I said, we know how accurate the weather is and what they're saying, but it looks like that may not be a factor. So, Seppo, provided the weather is fine, do you still think we're going to be too tall there?
Yeah, well, it could work. It could be dangerous. And looking at Swans' back line, there is a possibility they're looking to stretch them. I'll be happy with it. If it turns out and all these guys kick a couple of goals, it'll look like a masterstroke. But I have a feeling that it might come to fault if it is that everyone going for the same, providing they can stay out of the contest and let the guys at the feet. If Lockie Neal gets forward and Ballantyne's there and De Boer and the other guys crumb well, I think it will work. But there is a chance for it to really come unstuck. And I haven't really looked at our forward line and said we've had a really big problem like this before, because it's usually we're short on tools and forced to play some other guys in there. But it's now the smaller guys that seem to be the problem. But the good thing is, looking on the other side of the coin, is in the Sydney side, that we can test them out because they've made a couple of changes. They brought in Brendan Jack, Craig Bird, and a new guy, Jake Lloyd, while omitting Rowan and O'Keefe, presumably on bad form, and young Tom Mitchell's out with an ankle. So, and they didn't bring Tippett in, which was one that everyone was talking about and worrying us. So they've actually got a side that's probably not as good as what they probably had out in the field last week. So it plays into our favour.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you're looking at the ins and outs there, you'd have to say that the ins, although, Bird is a pretty good player, particularly in the wet, and I was surprised that he didn't play last week. While Brandon Jack and obviously Jake Lloyd's making his debut. I think he's a young Victorian boy, so I think from near Horsham, somewhere around there. But, as you said, the outs that they've got on form, Mitchell, O'Keefe and Rowan, particularly O'Keefe and Mitchell last year were probably in their, a couple of their better players towards the end of the year. And so it'll be interesting to see how they go with that lineup compared to ours. Obviously, they've got still some reasonably strong players in there. I like the likes of Luke Parker and Lance Franklin. Even though I know Buddy still cops a lot and he hasn't done there. He's still probably the best full forward that's been in the comp for the last 6 or 7 years, kicking 60-plus goals every year. So it'll be certainly still no easy game, that's for sure. It'll be just interesting to see how, particularly the Swans' defence, who are uncharacteristically leaking like a sieve compared to what they used to be. And some of those guys in there are getting a little bit older, particularly like Reece Shaw, Malcheski. They're all getting that little bit older. It'll be interesting to see who they go with on Pavlich as well, whether they stay with Grundy or whether they move Richards up the ground a little bit further to take that job. All right, any other matchups that you're looking forward to this week, Seppo, in the Sydney Fremantle game?
Well, it'll just be interesting to see where they play Lance Franklin and who we put him on. If he's going to be playing outside that 50 and let him take those long shots or try and set it up, it'll be great to see. I don't think we'll see McFarlane do any more of those real high up the ground run with rolls. I know last time we played
exactly.
Buddy when he's been at Hawthorn, we've given Johnson. Yeah, I think we had McFarlane sitting deeper, and even games recently, we've actually let Dawson go. So I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get a rotation of all three, Dawson, McFarlane and Johnson, playing on Buddy, depending on where he's positioned. I think we're trying to do, and I mentioned on the forum this week, I think we're trying to get McFarlane loose rather than take that physical contested centre-half back role. We've given them the loose sort of third man role and let Dawson and Johnson line up and let Luke McFarlane play like Glass has and hopefully extend his career by sort of keeping out of that contest. And I think Johnson and Dawson are quite capable.
Off each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Just rotate it up, mix it up. I don't think you'll see set matchups for the whole time. They're down there.
In the grand final.
Yeah.
Franklin spent most of, 2/3 of the game, sprinting side to side, 80 metres out, and our best centre half back went with him to no benefit to the team.
Yeah, I think I think McFarlane will play on Franklin. Like every time he's played on him in the past, and I think he's actually in Franklin's head a little bit. And I just can't see, particularly on the smaller ground of the SCG, I can't see why you wouldn't at least play McFarlane on him to begin with, and then you can have Dawson down back.
Oh shit! No, he will. He will put Franklin. McFarlane will play on Franklin, but if Franklin runs up the ground, McFarlane's not going to go with him.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, it just depends on how they set up, and I think it just depends on whether Franklin's doing any damage there. If Franklin's getting the ball and creating that link between the defence and the attack, and they're doing something damage with it, then McFarlane will obviously have to go with him. If he doesn't, well then, and he's getting the ball up there, but they're managing to just hold the wall there, I think then you can sort of allow that to happen. So, as you said, tactics will play a bit of a part on it. It'll be interesting to see as well in that game. Obviously, in this sort of preliminary final, Ryan Crowley went to Kieran Jack and really snuffed him out of the game. And basically, ever since that happened, every team that Sydney have played have done the same to Kieran Jack, and he's really struggled with that role because in the past he was primarily the tagger, and now he's sort of getting the tagging himself, and he's really struggled to learn how to cope with it at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see if Ross Lyon decides to go that way, or whether he puts him on Kennedy or Josh Kennedy, or whether he goes back to the Hanbury matchup from last year, which obviously Hanbury got on top during that game, particularly in the first half.
So we've laid the foundations out for all other sides to be able to beat Sydney since that preliminary final. They've been rubbish, and it's all because other sides have just copied what we've done. So hopefully we can run with that same plan and make these guys accountable again. It'll be interesting to see if Crowley does get that job, if guys like Josh Kennedy and Craig Bird that comes inside starts to rack it up. It'll be interesting to see who we've got that's quite pacey that can actually go with Lewis Jetta. And it'll be interesting to see if they have Sutcliffe on him, because I know Sutcliffe's quick, but I'm not sure he's Jetta quick. That'll be just interesting because I'm looking at some of the guys on our list there.
Quick, to be honest.
Yeah, and that might catch us out. And it's going to have to be guys like maybe Stephen Hill going head-to-head and just tell him to keep himself accountable and don't let him slip out.
Do you think Tendai Mazunga will go to Jared McVeigh, or do you think they're going to go head-to-head with him and maybe sort of say, well, maybe if we put Fife on him, we can sort of match up head-to-head, or do you think they'll go with a negative on McVeigh and Lau and then sort of let the other players determine it from there? I mean, if he plays half-forward, obviously, then, Matty DeBoer or someone like that may pick him up, or depending on which way.
You're entirely correct. It would depend on the position that he plays. We've got we essentially play 2 or 3 taggers every week. Mazunga, the second tagger, and Crowley, the first. If McVeigh plays primarily in the middle, then he will be tagged. And one of Hanbury and Jack will also be tagged. I think we can guarantee that.
Fremantle generally don't run 2 taggers in the middle, though. So if they do decide to go with Jack in the middle,
not 2 tight tags, no, but
a run with roll rather than a tag.
Yeah,
but if they do run both in the centre, they can't. Then obviously, because Mazunga rarely starts, he'll start on the wing, but rarely starts in the middle. So, if they do run with both Jack and McVeigh in the middle, it'll be interesting to see which way Fremantle decide to match up. Whether they do decide just to go head to head.
Not bounce down, but at regular stoppages, you would expect someone to go to McVeigh.
Absolutely, but I'm totally agreeing with around the ground. But obviously, in those areas where they can contain, it'll be interesting to see which way they go with it. The other obviously interesting matchup, I always find that a lot of the time when you look at the good sides or any side, the players that they have on the bench is usually a pretty good indicator in the class they have on the bench. And if you have a look at Sydney compared to what they were in years gone by, they're certainly nowhere near as strong. They've got Bird, Jake Lloyd, Jeremy Laidler, and Tom Derrickson. I think Laidler and Derricks are both recycled from Richmond and Carlton, respectively.
Hang on, you mean Tom Derricks as in Tom Derricks from the Waffle?
Yes, he used to play at Claremont and went across and he was on Richmond's list, and he dropped that infamous mark for Richmond against Gold Coast up at Cairns.
Because he's a blinking waffle player.
Well, you can't always necessarily say because they're waffle players, because there are a lot of waffle players who have come on for particularly our list, who have actually gone on and done some good things, but he certainly doesn't.
I'm using it as a pejorative, mate. Yeah.
Well, I suppose the other thing is they're missing Tippett, so really Derek's is a placeholder almost until Tippett comes back into that side, because I know they've got another couple of other tools to go in there, but that really shows that their depth isn't as strong as what ours is.
It's a pure ruckman, surely, Derek's.
But you've still got Tippett, you've still got Sam Reid, who's not playing in this game either. So obviously they are missing quite a few of their sort of taller, classier players, which obviously, I mean, if you bring one of those guys in, then Lewis Roberts-Thompson has a bit more flexibility in terms of going between back and forward. So it's certainly interesting to see. And obviously they had the other young guy, what was his name? The one who did his knee again, Alex Johnson. So, I mean, they have got a few guys out, which would obviously be in their best 22.
Actually, this is something we haven't discussed, which is the ruck situation. If, Tom Dirks is getting games for Sydney, and they've got to go up against Clark and Sandlands, two of the best, one of the best rucking combinations in the AFL, how are they going to handle this?
Mike Pike will certainly struggle, and we can afford them to really stretch them, and hopefully we use one of Sandlands and Clark as another key forward as well, and that's where that issue comes back to too many tools. Like, we could almost afford to, and I wonder if they do, if we're in a dominant position to actually sub off Sandlands just because we almost don't need him out there. So we'll certainly dominate without sounding too cocky, but I think we can definitely stretch him and hopefully put it to good effect around the ground as well, not just in the ruck.
Yeah, I mean, they may...
Well, sorry, I was going to say something just disrespectful about Claremont ruckman, and I remembered that might not be appropriate for the current podcast crew.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, like, there are a lot of guys who are waffle standard or who have been waffle players who have come through, and, like, I mean, we've only got to look at our own mature ages that we've picked up, like Mzungu. I mean, a lot of people would say the same, but I definitely get where you're coming from, and that's why I'm saying earlier that when you look at those guys on the interchange bench, that they're certainly not of the same class, I think, as the ones that we've certainly got with Lockie Neal, Clancy Pearce, Daniel Pearce, and Taberner. So I think it's certainly going to be an interesting, and even if you look at the emergencies, I mean, I must admit I don't know a lot about Zach Jones or Alia, but, even some of the guys with Sheridan.
Alia was he played for Subiaco last year, mostly reserves, I think.
Yeah.
Quite athletic, sort of forward ruckman of the shorter type, sort of around the 2 metre mark, possibly even less. I remember seeing him play at TV a couple of times. Incredibly athletic, but could hardly kick a ball straight over a 30-metre period.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, obviously, do you think Lee Spur will go to Dewey? Who do you think they'll put on Luke Parker? Do you think they'll go with Spur, or do you think they'll go Sutcliffe down back on him?
I reckon Spur.
I thought Parker was more of a midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly rotates through there. I mean, he certainly plays in both, but he does spend a little bit of time down forward as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the teams rotate, obviously, with their sides in there as well. So, I mean, we're certainly going to be quite a big side. I mean, even with our midfielders having Fife back in there, who loves the SCG, obviously, and it's been well documented this week. And obviously, he'll be itching to get back out there, having a 2-week break, so his body should be nice and fresh, even though I know they've been training him extra hard, etc. But, I mean, even still, he'll still be nice and fresh compared to some of the other boys out there who played last week in the heat. And we've also got to consider the heat factor.
Fire.
What's it?
Fife's going to come out breathing fire, I reckon, for 2 weeks off, and he'll be fired up and ready. And I know they did talk about his soreness in that time and sore calves and thighs and everything, but I think the stats exciting. I read this week...
I remember the day that... Was it 2011 that Fife came out against Sydney in the wet and showed us how good he was going to be at the age of 20?
Yeah. His last 4 games against Sydney, out of a possible 12 Brownlow votes, he's polled 9. So if that's a trend, expect some more best on-ground performances from Fife this weekend.
Yeah. And, that'll be... And I think the side, as you said, is going to be pretty reasonably settled. I mean, and even some of the guys who hadn't shown a lot, I thought Subin last week was obviously his kicking was very poor early in the game, but got better as the game went on. And I think we're starting to see those guys run into a little bit more, form and sort of settling down, particularly that back six. And I thought Clancy Pearce was also good last week, coming back into the side after having the first 3 weeks off. And he certainly showed that, he's not going to give up his spot without a fight. That's for sure when those guys do, when we get our full contingent back.
Well, the best uses the ball by hand in the squad, I think, Clancy Pierce.
So any other points you want to bring up, Seppo, about the game this week?
No, well, the one addition that we're actually going to be looking at for this round is the names on the back of jumpers. So it'll be quite interesting to see. I just caught a quick glimpse before of the Brisbane-Richmond game, and certainly a lot of comments been thrown around on social media and on the forum about what they look like, and I can't believe so many people are getting upset about it. I think it's a great addition myself, and I know a lot of players are actually behind it. I didn't think Brisbane looked too good with a combination of the yellow and white, I think, around. It looked very fuzzy and blurry, trying to actually picture the names on the back of ours. But I think the white against the purple, or providing our away strips will be white, we might have the purple against it. I think it will look really good. And it certainly helped those guys and girls, watching the game for the first time, or trying to see at least, in those stills or slow motions or stationary shots of the players who's who out there. And I think it's a good thing, especially when you're trying to, attribute a jumper yourself that you might have, like number 40, used to be Matt De Boer. And if you had a shirt yourself that had 40 and De Boer on it, it certainly means, you bought the player in recognition of that player and not the current 40, whoever that may be. I think it's Moller.
What's your anything before you give your thoughts on the jumpers, Paracleet? Anything you want to add about the Sydney game before we move on?
No. Probably thinking about the ruck was my only significant addition.
Yeah.
In terms of the names on the back of jumpers, I only caught a very brief period of the Brisbane game, and I'm kind of like the control and the experiment here, because I've forgotten that we were bringing this in for this round experimentally. So I watched a few minutes of the game after half time, hoping that Brisbane could stay in the game, but they didn't, and I didn't notice the numbers. So in general play, they're obviously not that visible in general play. Maybe in close-ups, or if you get the game when they're in front of you, they might provide something. So then, to me, what does it offer? If it's offering a significant, maybe upside in jumpers, so the clubs are making more money, the competition is making more money, maybe that might be a slight positive. But if that isn't the case, then it's kind of change for the sake of change, which, well, I'm not going to stop watching footy over it, but how much change for the sake of change do you need if it doesn't offer more cash or a significant marketing tool? We don't need to. The idea of aping American sports is now almost as old as I am. It's 30 years old. And how many more times can we return to the well? I mean, it's not the fresh new thing anymore. We've already sucked them dry. There's nothing fresh there, coloured uniforms, names on the back. If we've got to 2014 without adding names to the back, it's not going to make any difference. It's not 1985 anymore. That's my view.
Yeah. I mean, I must admit, Seppo, I was totally against it at the start. And I read some tweets or, replies of players and, about families and being sort of putting your name on the back. And I can understand that. But when I was watching the game tonight, when you're playing at that speed, I'd like to see the game live to see if it makes any difference. But watching it even on TV with the wide pan, you really can't notice the names at all anyway. So I don't know whether it'd be just, if you're going to do it, just do it like we have enough other Indigenous round, and we have women's round, and we have, volunteers round, and every other round you can think of. Maybe just have one or two rounds or a round a year with the names on it, because it really, it was all right when they zoomed in closer to the stoppages. You could sort of see that, but anyone who's sort of got any, watches any sort of footy can pick up most of those guys majority of the time anyway. But for me, I didn't think it added enough to it and sort of made it just cluttered the back of the jumper a little bit more. But it's only the one game. It'll be interesting to see how it looks when you've got a number of other teams in the colour combinations that they use it on as well, and also maybe having Foxtel who'll do it in true high or more true high definition than Channel 7 who go upgraded standard definition. It may make the names a little bit clearer as well, because obviously it wasn't that clear tonight to see with my eyes anyway, and I was watching on quite a big screen. So
I think it comes from American sports where the stars are in a very limited number of positions. Right? In basketball, it's a small court and it's always on them. In American football, the stars are the wide receivers and the quarterback. There's like 5 guys who are on camera and close up. And in baseball, it's the hitters and the pitchers. They're always in close shot. And they want to sell more shirts. For me, I don't think we're going to sell more shirts by having names in the back.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, for me, the only thing that was of any value is the fact that, I can understand it with their family. If you wanted to do something in terms of recognising your family or having your family name on the back of it, for that I can totally understand it, and I think there is some merit in that. But I think it's definitely more for the player than what it will be for the spectators who are at the ground or watching it on TV.
Mm.
All right, what do we? So tips time for tips, guys. Who do we think will get up? Seppo, what do you think? What's your tip for this week?
I'm definitely going for Freo this week. I've actually tipped us in our Tontine comp to hopefully make it through to the next round. So I think we're guaranteed to win by margin. I've actually thrown us a bit on more of a plus 15. So I think we're going to win by about 25 points. I reckon it'll be about a margin, especially if it's dry. I think we've got the ability to kick a big score and stretch them. So I reckon about a nice 25-point win will be on the cards.
All right, and Paracleet, how about yourself?
Well, I've been thinking about footy tipping, and I'm only going to do spreads in order to do justice to my views on probability. So I think that Sydney are in very poor form. I think their game plan's not working, so I'm thinking it's very difficult for them to get within 6 to 8 kicks of Freo. Of course, some of those might be straight, some might be inaccurate. So I'm going to say between 20 to 40 points to Freo. Fairly comfortable win.
All right, and I think you guys are about on the mark. I think it'll be around about a 3 to 4 goal victory. So I'll say, but probably as you said, I think the weather. I think it will be dry, but I think those sort of tools down in Fremantle can certainly get on top. And I'll say Fremantle by 32 points this week, and hopefully we'll continue on our merry way, because we do definitely have a pretty tough draw coming up for the next 4 weeks coming into the bye. So every win we can get now because obviously after the bye, the draw opens up a little bit for us, but every game that we've got up until the bye is really crucial for us in terms of our top 4 aspirations. So it's certainly one we can't afford to drop, that's for sure.
Certainly, if you said at the start of the year, after playing Collingwood, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, Essendon and Sydney, if we could be sitting 4-1, you'd take that in a heartbeat. So I think it'll be great to see just get this win on the board, get through that really hard stretch, and set up the next couple of games. Be looking forward to it.
Yeah, because as you
After
said,
Christmas, if we're 4-1.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a look in the, as you said, those first ones, it's certainly we definitely have a easier stretch home. I mean, the last couple of games are pretty tough, but that middle part of the ground or the season, there's certainly some definitely easier games than what we've got up until the bye. So, as you said, if we can get over a few of those games, we certainly will hold us in good stead.
If we're like 9-2 at the halfway point, then the minor premiership going to be pretty close to the mark.
Yeah, I mean, Hawthorn are the ones that are clearly the team to beat at the moment. But as I said, you don't win them in March or April. So hopefully we'll see how they progress from there. Anything else you want to add for the Big Footy Board this week, Seppo?
No, nothing this week. Just for all those in Victoria, if you do get down to watch the game, get down to the Great Northern Hotel, my usual local in Carlton on Rathdown Street. I'll be there this Saturday to watch the game and see you all there. All
right, excellent. And for those of you who are watching in Perth, or if you're going over for the game, we hope it's a enjoyable one. And hopefully you do get to see another good win, or even though last year was a draw. And although we don't get to see Sydney over here very often, hopefully we'll continue our good form that we've shown over there, that's for sure. All right, we'll finish up there. So thanks again for joining us again this week, Paracleet.
Our pleasure.
And also, Seppo, yourself, thanks for coming on board as usual.
No problems. See you all next week.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are in Perth tomorrow and not going away for the Easter break and got nothing on, don't forget that Peel are playing tomorrow down at Rushton Park on Good Friday. So there's certainly, if you've got nothing else on and there's certainly no footy on, then go down and get a chance to have a look at some of our Freo reserves players, because they'll be certainly running around out there, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of crowd they pull. All
So
right.
I'm looking forward to getting down to see a Peel game this season. I won't be able to see it tomorrow, but definitely looking forward to get down there, guys. So I recommend it.
Absolutely, and I'm going to try and get down there tomorrow during the game, so hopefully it'll be good for that. But otherwise, hope everyone has a safe and happy Easter, and we'll catch you again hopefully after a Fremantle victory against the Swans. That's it for now. Bye for now. Thanks.